for us to go on.
Hello. Welcome everybody to the Emotional Entrepreneur Show with Summer and
Jen.
Hello everybody. We're so happy to be here with you. We're excited. We love our Tuesdays and we have a really interesting subject today and I can't wait to share it with you. So the subject that we're going to cover today is show purpose-driven profits, understanding your entrepreneurial why. Why? Oh, it's one of those days. It's one of those goofy days. So
It's every day.
why? What's your purpose? I like to say PPI. What's your passion, purpose, and impact? What is that for you? And I think when we think about it that way, it helps us really align with what we're doing. What are your thoughts, Jen? And welcome, by the way. Hello.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Yes, shout out to Cynthia and Divya and how do I say this? I drip glitter X. Oh, I love that. I drip glitter X. No, I think it's so important to, we hear this often, go back to your why, remember your why. But I think in regards to the theme for today about purpose-driven profits, I know over the years, I have now that I've been doing things for so long, I see a huge difference when I'm in total alignment and congruency with what it is I'm doing. There's a totally different feel to it. And it makes a massive difference, because if there is some cringiness around something you're doing, or you're trying it out or you feel like you're forcing it, it just doesn't work. I mean, it could. I'm not saying it doesn't. I shouldn't say it doesn't work. It could work, but it's just not going to have the ease and flow that, you probably would like to have. And when I say ease and flow, I also want to be clear that I'm not saying everything's easy, that, everything just falls in your lap. There is just a different energy where things fall into place a little differently. There's alignment. There are opportunities that just come up versus it feeling like there's a constant struggle and battle the whole time through. That's what I'm talking about, ease and flow versus the struggle bus. But when I do talk about ease and flow, just note, I'm not saying that everything is smooth and easy and there's no problems or hiccups. That's not what I'm saying. But there is a difference between the two. But yeah, just having that experience on both sides, trust me, when you're in alignment and you know your why, and you are really doing what you want to do, and you really feel like, that's one of the P's in Summer's PPI is the purpose. When you are living that, huge difference, and huge difference in how you show up and how the money comes.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna take us back to the way that you feel, right? I'm going to tap back into that, Jen, because I love that you said that and you brought that up. Because even as of yesterday, we were working on a project and I was like, oh my gosh, this feels so good, right? And I think for me at least, and I think, this is what we're trying to get across to the viewers is, how do you feel? How are you feeling about what you're doing today, what you're doing right now, especially as an entrepreneur? What is it that you're doing? Ask yourself, what is it that I'm doing? Understand your why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? That's simple, right? Why are you doing what you're doing? What is the purpose? And what is the impact that you're making? How are you helping others? And I think it goes back to, at least for me, and tell me, if it's something different for you, because your process may not be the same as our process. Your why is definitely not going to be the same as our why. But what is it that drives you, that motivates you, that wants you to do what you're doing? Is it just about money, or is it about feeling good because you're in alignment with your values, your core values? And for me, that's something that under core women, I know my value. I know my values. And those are different. There's two distinctly different things. Knowing your value and knowing your values, right? And I think when I know my values, everything I choose to do kind of runs that same stream or that same value line, so to speak. And so when it does, to me, that feels in alignment. That feels good to me. That it's speaking to my soul. It's speaking to my spirit. And to me, that feels really good. I want to give you an example of something that I saw today. And it was like, oh, it spoke to me. And it aligned with exactly what we're talking about here. Now, I want you to check this out. Before I get into the story that I'm going to tell you, everything we're talking about, when you look at a strategic plan, when you look at your why, your mission, your vision, your values, it's all on it. It's all on a strategic plan. But I think it comes back to not just being so technical, but being in alignment with how you're feeling and that strategy. How are you feeling? How are you feeling today about what you're doing? So I'm going to go to the story. I'm going to jump to the story. So I was reading on social media that this woman, she's been an anchor for 20 years. I think it might have been somewhere in the South, maybe even Texas. And she was shopping at the grocery store. Who's ever heard of Winn-Dixie? Have you ever heard of that? Okay, it's in the South, and it's one of their chain grocery stores, and so it's like Piggly Wiggly, Winn-Dixie. It's one of the biggies out there. So who's heard of Winn-Dixie? Anywho, so she comes out, she's done shopping. She's you have the place where you return your carts and such, and she
Yeah.
sees this guy, this older man. He's 90 years old. 90 years old, putting together the carts and taking them inside the store, gathering them up. He's working. 90. It's super hot. If you live in the South, I live in what technically they call the South in Virginia. But I feel like it's kind of northern, southern,
That's not
whatever.
South to
So
me.
anyway,
I'm pretty good at geography, and I don't consider that South.
well, some people might think differently here in Virginia. So, but I live in northern Virginia near DC, and anywho, when you live here, it gets really muggy. It gets really hot. So this older gentleman is working. He's like gathering these cards. 90, 90, no joke, right? So she gets in her car and the article says, it's really hot, and she's on her way home. And I don't know if she went home first. I can't recall exactly, or she just turned around, and she may have just turned around, reparked, and she wanted to meet this man. And she said, why are you gathering carts? Why are you doing what you're doing? And he said, because we all need to eat. And I was like, oh. Now, mind you, she was an anchor in in the uh in the area for 20 years, and she retired, and she's part of all these organizations where they help community and bring community together and such. So what she did is she met him, she asked his name, she went home, and she started a GoFundMe page, and in a matter of a day she raised $220,000 in a matter of 24 hours. Now, that is in alignment with her because she loves giving back to community. She loves being part of projects that support those around her. It aligns with her values. It aligns with what she does. It aligns with, giving information to the community, raising community up, bringing community together. And that's exactly what she did. Now that's a particular situation. And you know what? And the funny thing is, he didn't even believe her. She tried to call him. He's like, I don't know you, click. So what she did is, because she knew people, she brought one of the like sheriffs or police officers with her to, and she's like, I just want you to know this is real. Like, this is real. I'm bringing this officer with me to let you know that this is legit. Right. And so he's like, wow, blown away. And she's like, and the officer says, are you going to stop working now? And he goes, no, because it gives me my why. It gives me purpose.
And then he took the money.
And he did take the money, but he's donating a quarter of it to a church down the street who helps other people as well.
That's great. I was wondering, like, at his age, with that much, what's going to happen to it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and here's the thing. He only gets he was a veteran, and he only gets so much Social Security, and his Social Security and what he was living on wasn't making his bills, which was rent, water, electricity, those kinds of things. And it's just like, are you kidding me? How incredibly sad. And so she was following her why and her values. He was doing things that aligned with his values and his purpose. And that is exactly what we're talking about today. In both our personal and professional lives, are you showing up and are you feeling good? Are you feeling your why? Jen?
Stories like that, I've heard, some variation of it.
Yes.
What's always interesting is the person that's trying to do the good is doing, has good intentions, right? And a big heart. I always find it interesting. There's always a plot twist where the person that's supposed to be the receiver usually doesn't stop working, usually doesn't stop doing something different. And I always wondered if the person that had the intention of doing the good deed ever stopped to wonder, is this person going to stop? Oh, my light went finally off. It was like on a different level. It is just interesting, but I always, when I was listening to you talk about the story, I found it fascinating that he's like, no, I'm not gonna stop working, because he said to her, like, this gives me purpose. Like, I mean, you hear those stories where somebody dies because they just stop, they retire and then they don't have anything to wake up to anymore. They're not around people. They're not, just moving. And even if it's the most menial thing, it gives that person purpose. So it's always fascinating to see what path somebody chooses once this big life-changing event comes their way. You just never know. And that's why it's important to realize that everybody has a unique take on, what would you do? Everybody, some people would like, oh my gosh, I would totally quit and travel, or, I would, do this and this. And then some people are like, no, I'm just going to keep on doing what I was going to do.
Yeah. And I think too that as a military spouse and somebody, when my husband retired, I realized that I, for years, had to do resume after resume after resume after resume, because every time we moved, I left a job. And at the time I was working in various hospitals. So I wanted to stay in that realm of what I love to do. And that was, I went to school for many years to get a doctorate in clinical psych. I wanted to stay in the field. And so what did that mean? That meant looking for a job. And everywhere we landed wasn't the greatest place, right? Where they put military bases aren't always like fun places. so it's like, okay, where do I go? Where do I find a job? And there's sometimes, because they're smaller towns, there's very limited resources. So I was always redoing these resumes, and I was always thinking about why. What was my motivation for doing what I was doing? Was it just to pay my bills? No, it absolutely wasn't just to pay my bills. There was more to it. There was more to it intrinsically for me. It was helping others and knowing my why. And understanding that this job isn't for everybody. It wasn't for everybody to sit at a hospital, especially a locked mental health hospital, and assess people day in who are in, day out, who are in crisis. Never a thank you, but the thank you was that they showed up, and were there to get some help. And to me, people would always ask, how are you doing that job? How do you do that job every day? And I said, because everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a different story, and everybody's got something going on, right? And we never know where we're going to be tomorrow, next year, 10 years from now. And our story, hopefully it won't. And hopefully there's preventative measures put in place to not be in a mental health hospital. But you don't know like where you're going to be many times. And it's like something leads to something, right? So that was my purpose. That was my why. So getting back to my real like purpose of telling that story is my husband retired. And when he retired, he didn't really know how to make a resume at that point because he had been in the Marine Corps for 21 years. And what I realized is I started helping him, and then he would say, "Oh, my wife helped me on this," and he started referring people, and then people were starting to come. "Hey, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that?" And I realized too that people were struggling because the military was their purpose. It was their why. So what were they going to do tomorrow when they didn't have the military? And to me, I kept saying, think of something that you want to do. Think of things, start researching now. Start volunteering your time on weekends. Start getting connected with community or the people that you want to maybe mentor you, because that is going to be that bridge to developing your purpose in a different way, maybe somewhere else. And I think that that man who was 90 years old, yeah, it gave him purpose. It gave him a reason to get up. It gave him community connection. It gave him things where he could connect with his community. So, I mean, there's so many whys. So, what is your why? What is meaningful to you? What intrinsically motivates you? What's going to happen? And I want to throw this out there and maybe put this out there too, that what's going to happen when you run into challenging times? Your why is going to be what grounds you. Why you were there. You're going to return to that. Why am I doing this? Why is this meaningful to me? Why does this drive me? Why does this lift my spirit? And so those are some of the questions I'd like to put out to you. And when you've had challenging times, what have you done? Have you looked back at your why and considered what motivated you? What kept you grounded? What kept you where you were, where you are today? Jen, I know you must have. I know I've come into challenging times, and there could have been like so many times I could have gone, screw the entrepreneurship. I'm going back to doing what getting a check every week, knowing how much I could bring in, knowing my value. I could do that, but I love this. So, Jen, what's kept you here in this space?
It's funny. My why is sometimes motivated by something negative. It's not
Mm,
always, I mean, some of it's positive, like, okay, I want one of my values is adventure and fun.
yeah.
And but when I think about the negative things, it's enough to make me like keep going. Because I think about the last, full-time job I had, and in 2005, I absolutely hated it. Hated it. Hated it. I know hate's a strong. I hated it. I didn't care how much money I was making. It was that bad. And I was doing really good for being somebody in my early 20s. That was crazy. And I just never forgot how horrible it felt to be micromanaged and to be told I had to stay because this account came through. Oh, I hated it. And that is enough to be like, hell no, we ain't going back to that. So
Yeah.
it is so strong of an emotion that I have told people, even in different, interviews and whatnot, I said, even when it is that bad as an entrepreneur and it feels like those moments when nothing's working,
Yeah.
I don't care. I rather go through that and struggle and be like, oh, shit, what am I going to do now? I
Yeah.
rather go through that than have the stability that I had. Because
Hmm.
even though I had that stability, and people talk about, that's a whole different topic. I have a whole different
Yeah.
thing on like security and stability. And I think it's a constant, whatever. We're not going there. But for me, I've had that before. And it did not guarantee me happiness. It did not always mean that I was joy filled. And, I this is why I think I embrace change very, very easily. Change is very natural for me. I freaking love it. I can just roll with it. If something blows up and doesn't work out, it's like I embrace it because I think about when I had the quote unquote stability, when I had the certain things, like I know what it's like. And I'm not saying that's not nice to have. That is not what I'm saying. I know that it provides safety and security and a steady income. And there are nice things that come from that comfort. I get that. But the other parts that came with it, I'm not about that life. So I'm willing to give up all this and redefine how I can have that security and that safety in the entrepreneurial sense. But that works for me. That is my purpose. I love that crazy stuff. And I love it's like a puzzle for me. So I have been there. So that every time I think about, like, I don't know about this, and then I go back to that moment when I was there, I'm like, oh no, we're not going there. And then I wake up and do it again. And just, it's motivating me to just continuously find the solution. And one thing I will say too is focus on 1%. This is something that I talk about a lot now, is focus on that 1% that's going to move you forward. I think too often when, especially we're in these moments when we're in a panic mode, a lot of stuff's not working, we're constantly trying to find the thing that's going to make us jump from here all the way to here. And then your brain just freezes, you start panicking, and then it just looks like this giant mountain that you don't know how you're going to overcome it. How are you going to cross it? When all you need to do is just like, well, can you first find the path to get on the right, track? Okay, can you locate the steps, the next 10 steps that you need to take to get to this bridge? You're looking at it from such a macro level that you need to come down and just go like, okay, well, what's the little steps that I need to take? 1% every day, every week, just even if it's that. Too often, some of us are just trying to overcome everything. And then what happens? You end up doing nothing. You end up not moving because every day you're like, okay, I'm going to figure it out now. Okay, I'm going to figure it out now. But you're trying to figure out the giant thing instead of the little 1%. So I got off topic, but
No,
yeah,
I love it.
that is my why, to
Yeah.
never return to that crappy feeling. That works for me. I use both negative and positive reinforcement.
Hey, I like that. I'm going to read Chastity. She says, it's definitely a way to show their passion and purpose. I've told my current company that even if I win the lottery, I'd still work there. Maybe not as many days, but I'd still work there, laugh out loud, due to my love of sports. And she does something related to sports and she loves what she's doing. And so she knows what is driving her, and that's her passion, right? And so I want to go back to something that you said, that 1%. And then when we look at things from a macro level, what I talk about in relation to that is how we catastrophize things. Like, if I don't, everything's going to go wrong. If I do all this right, everything's going to go right. It can go either way, right? And it's like, bring it down to that myopic micro level. We talk about getting granular all the time. That's a word that's constantly used about, getting granular about your audience, but get granular, as Jen said, that 1% every day. And that will move the dial. Trust us, because we've been in these modes, and I've seen both Jen and I go, oh my gosh, okay, we got to do this, and we got to do this before, and we got to get all this together, and we jumped, and we're like, nah. We need to bring it down and bring it back to what I like to call our core. There's a reason I called my company Core Women, because it stands for my guiding principles, how we kinetically connect as we move through the world, how we as humans connect. There's a connection. We yearn for connection. How are we doing that as we're moving so quickly through the world? How do we organically learn from one another? SEO, how do we oh my gosh, I forgot my R. So let me go to E. How do we empower each other to promote change? And how do we really just, let me grab my card. What the hell is wrong with me? You know what's wrong with me, folks, is I didn't get enough sleep last night. So how do we really just reshape our lives through our diverse interaction? And that's something that's really important to me, because we're all so diverse. So it's kinetically connecting, organically learning, reshaping our lives through diverse interaction, and empowering each other to promote change. So those are things that drive me because I think it's in your core. So what's in your core? Is it just your why? Is it how you're feeling? Is it your strategy? Is it getting granular? Is it that 1%? What motivates you? What is driving you? What speaks to you? What are you feeling about what you're doing today, tomorrow, yesterday? And Jen, I like what you said about going back and your drivers. What drives you? It's that negativity. It doesn't always have to be something positive. It can be, oh my gosh, I don't want to be back there. I'm not going to be back there. So how do I stay here and not go back there? I can't hear you. Mute.
How did I hit the mute? One of the things I think I always go back to as well is, like you mentioned, values. And aside from fun and adventure, independence and freedom is a huge one for me.
Yeah.
And I just knew early on, like, I can't stand working for somebody else. I really am not built that way. And so that's another, I guess, negative driver where I think about, I had described it many times like that, any kind of job I had where I felt like I don't like being told what to do. I don't like being micromanaged. It's so I think about the environments that I don't flourish in, and I think about the ones that, like, you leave me alone, I will deliver
Yeah.
100. And so I think it's important to, like, always go back to what your values are, and then ask yourself if the situation that you're in is allowing you to create that environment for yourself that aligns with those values, because that's how you're going to flourish. You're going to thrive and grow and make the money and build an incredible life when you are allowing yourself to be in environments like that.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how many people are miserable at their jobs. So many.
Yeah, so many. And I think that, so here's the thing. It's important for us to have people at those jobs, right? Whether it be at a hospital, whether it be at a government employee job, we need those people. It's important. That's what makes the world go around, right? Makes our community grow. And then we also need entrepreneurs. And I think that's a really important part of our community and what allows us to grow as a country. And so as a nation in the world, around the world, right? And so I think that we can make that situation better. Even if we do work for, let's say, for-profit, nonprofit, government entity, we seek out things where we try and get the support we need to grow in those positions. And I think that's really important. It's just finding your niche, right? It's finding where you are and being able to find that support in that community to lift you up. Because I can tell you, I really enjoyed what I did. And I worked my way from working in human services and graduating from college and working for group homes and working in those homes where I would get told when I come to work from the kids that were there, uh-oh, the bee is back, right? And it wasn't, it was, I was creating structure with them. They just came from a place of no structure, chaos. So when they found that, there was somebody in there who actually cared and who was trying to help them create structure in their world, they were pushing back. So there was this power struggle, right? So once we started working together and they got to trust me, know me, it took, about that good 6 months, 3 to 6 months. By the time I left a year later, they're like, are you leaving? But what they would say every day is, are you coming back? Are you coming back? Are you coming back? And to me, that was growth because I knew that we had created a connection. We had created something. And so it's about finding community where you are. It's about knowing why you're at where you're at. And so when I started my trajectory into the field of human services and psychology, it was really about finding my niche. What was it that I wanted to do? Why was I where did I want to be? Even when we had to move from place to place to place, I needed to learn more. And this is something I do want to throw out there. I needed to learn more to listen to my inner knowing. When I started doing that, and I started going into the interviews, and people would say, "Oh, yes, we really love you. Oh, yes, we want to offer you this great job." And I'd ask them questions like, "Well, how many people have been in this job?" Or how many? And when they'd say, "Oh, well, there have been 7 people," and I'm like, "In what length of time?" "Oh, in 2 years." I got like these tingly feelings like, "Uh-oh, what's going on here?" Right. And because I didn't listen to my inner knowing, and because I didn't listen to that kind of light bulb, uh-oh feeling, that's what got me into trouble. And
Mm.
it wasn't because I
Usually
didn't
does.
want it, huh?
Usually does.
It does. And here's the thing, it wasn't because I didn't want to be there for the people and to help the organization. It was what's going on within the organization, the people that are there, that's not working right now.
Usually management.
Yes,
Usually
exactly.
management.
And yes, of course it was. But you got to realize we're all dealing with our different variables, right? So back then, it was we didn't have nearly as many things online. So when we were moving, there wasn't a whole lot of those options at the time. There wasn't where we landed in regards to our city. There wasn't. There was one hospital, one mental health hospital, one. There were limited resources, and I was like, "Uh-oh, this is antiquated the way they're functioning, all this stuff." So we're looking at look at what's going on with you, look at what you're getting into, look at the resources that are available to you, and then also start creating the resources. So if you want something changed, see if you can change it. See how you would go about making those changes. But really, it's understanding your why, because once you do that, guess what? You're not only going to love what you do, but those profits are going to start coming in. Those profits are going to start going up in regards to what you're doing in your business. And I think it takes some time too. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jen. I mean, some people know right away, but I think for me, it took some time to really kind of build what I really wanted to build and point it in the direction that I wanted to point it in. So, meaning that things became more clear with time. And I really started aligning those values with things that were really meaningful to me. What about you, Jen? Did you just jump right in and know exactly what you wanted to do, or did it take time to build?
No, it took time to build. It took a lot of experience and going through different things. I think just, getting older, more mature, more wiser, you start to really discover who you are
Yeah.
and discover what it is that you really want to do. I think along the journey, especially, and I'm not saying that for all of you become entrepreneurs, that is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that was my thing. Okay. I just knew I could not work for somebody else because I hated it. But for those of you who don't like where you're at and you have a job and you're totally happy working, for somebody, and entrepreneurship is not your gig, but just make sure that you are, and like you guys mentioned it, like Chastity said, the environment is a great point here. It's like the
Yeah.
soil, and it's so important to know where you can flourish and where you will wither. Find that soil that's going to help you grow. You want to
Yeah.
stay green and growing, right? So yeah. So that I want to make that clear. I'm not saying everyone go build your business. I'm not saying that. But for me, I think it was just a lot of trial and error. And I think especially on this entrepreneurial journey, especially in the coaching space, you just see, oh, people are doing it this way. This is how you're supposed to do this, and this is what you're supposed to do. And you just get caught up in this thing of, oh, I'm supposed to do that. I'm supposed to make this. I'm supposed to do this freebie. I'm supposed to do this webinar. And you just get so inundated with how you're supposed to do it. And I
Yeah.
have gotten in the more recent year, I have gotten to the point where, like, no, I'm not doing any of that. I'm not doing some of that, not any of that, but some of that I'm not doing
Yeah.
because I didn't like it. And I think there's also, with the wisdom and experience, you have to also discern, am I not doing it because I'm afraid, or am I not doing this because I just don't enjoy it? Because there is a difference.
Yeah.
Because we can easily hide, but not like, well, that's not how I want to do it. Well, no, it's because you're afraid, you don't want to pick up the phone. Like, here's a perfect example. We get into this conversation a lot. I don't like making sales calls. I just don't. Trust me, it is not because I'm afraid to pick up the phone, because I was a financial advisor and I had to find my own clients. So I've done that. It's because I don't like having to convince people. Like, I
Mhm.
don't like that whole act. But I do find that there are other ways to go about that process. So
Yeah.
that's just an example. So I'm not afraid of talking to people. I've been doing it for like 20 years already, right? And having to, I mean, try to convince somebody to move millions of dollars with you. I've done it. I'm not afraid of that. It's more of like, I don't enjoy that part. It's just, so I've had to discover what I like to do and how do I do more of that? And then what are the parts that either I'm not strong in, or I just don't like doing that, I don't enjoy it. How do I restructure what I'm doing so I can eliminate that? Or how do I bring somebody in or integrate a system that can take care of that component of the business? And
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. You have to be, strategic in it, and be discerning whether it's you just hiding behind the veil. Well, I don't like doing that. Jen said, you don't do that. No, be realistic and understand if it's something you're afraid of, or something like you got to work through those things, and I think that's also a part of it too, that affects your bottom line, that affects the money coming in and what's not coming in. You do have to, I believe that you do have to go through certain things to see, like, okay, now that didn't work. Can I do it again? How do I learn and do it a different way? So, those kinds of trial and error situations, you do have to go through those things so that you can understand how to do it better, or how to eliminate it, how to do more of it, whatever the case may be. But it's part of the journey. It's part of understanding, how's this working in the big scheme of things. But I think it's the most important thing is always asking yourself with every decision you make, does this continuously align with who I am, how I want to be, how I want to show up? Do I stay in constant integrity if I make a yes, if I say yes to this particular decision? Because like it's like Summer mentioned with that inner knowing, if once you start to feel like, no, that's a, especially when I talk to clients and then I'll ask them questions and then their answers kind of like, I'm like, nope, it's a no. I don't even give them time to, explain it. They're like, really? I'm like, listen to your energy. Listen
Yeah.
how you're answering that. I don't even care what the excuse or the reasoning you're gonna give me at this point. I mean, I let them tell me, but I'm like, no, you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Why are you doing it? And then they can't answer it, and they'll say like, yeah, you're right. I really want to do this. And I'm like, see, you already know. You
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
know. So listen to that inner knowing and that gut instinct that we ignore so often. And always remember you always remind yourself to come back to who you are and your values. And then you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
You're gonna go wrong when you're not in alignment with that. And you know what that feels like.
Yeah. I love that, Jen. And I want to add really quickly to that because we're at time. So, two things, or one thing right now is when you question that inner, you know, that that oogie feeling or that, oh, I don't know, and you're questioning it. Are you questioning it because, and really get clear with this, don't try and make excuses for it, but really get clear. Are you questioning it because you really feel like, okay, that's not something I want to do, or I'm afraid to do it and I'm not going to go there because I'm not going to push myself to in that direction because I fear doing it. So if you fear it, push yourself a little bit to go in that direction to experience something new. Like Jen and I have in regards to Jen's been an entrepreneur for years, but like I have when I went from, going into my professional field to entrepreneurship, it was something different. It was, are you going to do this? What is it going to look like? How is it going to feel? How are you going to build this? Right. So I think there's two distinct things. Yes, listen to that inner knowing of, ooh, this doesn't feel right. Or am I scared and I'm just not trying this? And so am I limiting myself?
Right.
So I think that's really important. Now we're getting to our nuggets here. Jen, what is your nugget?
My nugget is, what is that thing that you've been procrastinating on, or you keep saying you're going to do it and you haven't done it? Whatever that thing is, identify it again in your brain. And then the next thing I want you to do is ask yourself, what's that 1% that I could do to push this, to push yourself moving towards accomplishing it? So identify what that next step is so that you can get the ball rolling in the direction of accomplishing that thing.
Mm, I love that. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. How about you?
My nugget, I actually have two. So the first one is when you're thinking about doing something and you're fearful because you're like, I got to make this money and I got to do this. Well, if you're thinking about doing something else, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can take small steps. That 1% that Jen's talking about, you can take those small steps to do a side gig, to do something on the side, to do a weekend thing, to get connected with somebody you want to volunteer with. It doesn't have to be all or nothing and you leave this other position. When you're ready to leave that position, you've already started building something. And I think that's important to remember. It's think about how you want to structure what you want to do, because it doesn't mean that you have to leave that regular gig. You can eventually, but try something on the side as well. And the other thing I would say is if you're somewhere and you're just not feeling like you're growing, you don't have to just jump and get off the ship. You can look for help within the organization. And I would suggest go seeking out a mentor. Seek out a mentor, interview people, see who you might want to work with, who might help you. I have had so many incredible mentors throughout my life, and it's made such a huge difference in learning different things, exploring different things. And it even got me to the point where I shifted from doing therapy because that was not something I like to do. I do not like to sit in a room and do therapy with people. Like that's not my jam. My jam is getting in a hospital, working triage, doing quick assessments, and determining under severe situations what I want, what should happen with A, B, or C, or in a particular situation, or with somebody in crisis. That's my jam. So, and I knew that. And I knew that by having mentorship and by exploring different things and working in different areas of the field. So explore, get a mentor, do different things, but understand your why. Understand your why for if you're an entrepreneur, if you work for a company, if you work for a government, understand your why. Why are you there? Why are you doing what you're doing? Because I know I've had this conversation with many people, many people. And the last thing I would say is I know this is three. The last thing I would say is if you're doing everything on social media, stop. Go hit the pavement, boots on the ground. Boots on the ground, man. That means go meet people out in community. Because sometimes I think we get fooled with, oh my gosh, there's so many people out here doing A, B, or C that we become fearful, or we think that the field is it's too inundated, and we're like, oh, and that could be discouraging. So go out into community. Not everything is online. It's more connection. What are you laughing about?
Now you're telling get out there. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. I can't even start this conversation because yeah, I have my thoughts on networking. So, but yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying like, you don't have to join an organization. There's some that I was like, oh no, I don't want to jump into that. No, I'm saying go out and meet people. Talk about what you do. Because if you don't, nobody's going to know what you do.
yeah,
And
it's weird. I have seen in different groups people they don't want to they don't even use social media or they don't want to show their face. And I get that's a whole different issue, but
that's a whole different thing. Yeah.
yeah,
And what
it's
I'm saying,
fascinating to me. I'm like, how are people going to build a relationship with you if you aren't meeting anybody, if you're not posting anything about what you, how are they going to find out what you do? Or if they don't, for all that, you're like in a cave essentially if you're not out there building relationships with people, whether it's online or offline.
yeah. And you know what? I have to say that I built relationships and a lot of them online, but we've taken those relationships offline and we've become more invested in each other as a community, and which has been incredible. So what I'm saying though is on that last point is not everything is online. I don't want you to be fooled by, oh my gosh, these people are also great and they're here. And I think Jen and I have been through that where we think, oh my gosh, we've been to how do we get there? why are we struggling, or why are we not there already? Because we're doing amazing things, right? And I don't want you to be discouraged because you think that's your bar, or you're measuring up against somebody else's what they're doing. That's not true. I think we get into, and that can be a different episode altogether. And we have talked about that before. Anyway, last words, Jen.
No, I'm done.
I know we went long,
I'm
really long.
done.
All
I'm
right,
done.
everyone, take
Way too
care.
many tangents. Sorry, guys. But thanks for hanging.
I mean, it all just deals with your why. So anyway. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. All right. Take care. We're going to dance it out. Bye. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Chastity. Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I feel like I'm forgetting. Divine.
Cynthia earlier.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Thanks
Have a
for
great
being
week.
here.